What if the most overlooked coin in your pocket isn't a penny broken bar, isn't silver broken bar, but a modern nickel quietly hiding a life-changing secret? Imagine realizing that something you once tossed into a jar, or maybe even spent on a cup of coffee, could be worth more than most homes in America. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at your spare change the same way again, and you might feel an urgent need to check every single coin you own. For decades, Americans have been conditioned to believe that only ancient coins or gold pieces create real wealth, but history loves to reward those who pay attention when others are asleep. In 2010, while most people were focused on recovering from a financial crisis, the U.S. Mint quietly released a Jefferson nickel from the Denver Mint. Ordinary on the surface, familiar, almost boring, Thomas Jefferson on the front, Monticello on the back, and yet, buried within this release lies a story that has electrified serious collectors and sent shockwaves through the rare coin market. Now here's where the heartbeat quickens. One extraordinary 2010 D. Thomas Jefferson nickel, an extreme rarity tied to a very specific mint anomaly and condition, has been discussed in elite numismatic circles with valuations approaching $865,000, not because it's old, not because it's made of gold, but because it shouldn't exist the way it does, and when something isn't supposed to exist, collectors pay attention, big attention. Think about that for a second. $865,000 from a nickel. That's not retirement money, that's legacy money. That's the kind of wealth that changes how your children and grandchildren live. And the uncomfortable question starts creeping in: a broken bar. What if you already had one and didn't know it? Most people don't lose money because they make bad decisions. They lose money because they don't know what they're holding. Fear creeps in here, because ignorance is expensive. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They don't glow. They don't shout, "I'm rare." They whisper, and only those who listen closely ever hear them. The 2010 D. Jefferson nickel is part of the long-running series that began in 1938, but this year marked a return to the classic Monticello reverse after the westward journey redesigns. Millions were minted a year, but only a microscopic fraction exhibit the traits that separate pocket change from treasure. We're talking about razor-sharp strikes, unusual die characteristics, rare surface anomalies, and pristine preservation that borders on perfection, the kind of perfection grading services obsess over. And let's be honest for a moment, how many coins do you think survive untouched? How many avoided scratches, fingerprints, corrosion, or the bottom of a greasy cup holder? Exactly. Survival is the first filter, perfection is the second, and rarity lives in the narrow space between the two. Here's the exciting part: coins like this don't usually reveal their value overnight. They climb quietly, they change hands privately, they surface at auctions and make seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs. Suddenly, a room goes silent, bidding jumps, numbers escalate fast, and before you know it, a nickel becomes the star of the room. That's not fantasy, that's how rare coin markets actually behave. You might be thinking, come on, isn't this just hype? Fair question. Healthy skepticism is smart, but history doesn't lie. The 1943 copper penny, the 1955 double die cent, the 2000 mule dollar, every one of them started as pocket change. Every one of them was dismissed until it wasn't. And the people who acted early weren't lucky, they were informed. Now let's talk urgency, because this window doesn't stay open forever. As awareness grows, as more collectors search rolls, jars, and inherited collections, the odds shift. Once a coin is identified, graded, and locked away in a private collection, it's gone. Supply tightens, demand intensifies, prices don't politely rise, they jump, and those on the outside are left wishing they looked sooner. There's also a subtle emotional trap here. Many people feel foolish checking modern coins. They think wealth must be ancient, dusty, or obvious, but wealth doesn't care about your assumptions. Wealth rewards curiosity, and sometimes, it hides in plain sight, laughing quietly while everyone else scrolls past opportunity. Let me reset your attention for a second with a simple thought. If someone handed you a nickel and said, "This could pay off your house," Would you at least look at it twice? Of course you would. So why not treat your own coins with the same respect? And here's the cliffhanger that most people miss. This isn't just about one nickel. It's about training your eye. Once you understand how a 2010 Jefferson nickel could reach extraordinary valuations, you start seeing patterns. You start revisiting pennies, dimes, quarters of coins you already own. The same market forces apply. Scarcity, condition, errors, timing. Suddenly, your change jar doesn't look so ordinary anymore. The final truth is this: opportunities to build wealth don't always come wrapped in gold bars or flashy headlines. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they're small, sometimes they weigh exactly 5 grams and sit unnoticed in a drawer. The difference between regret and reward is action. So here's the challenge: don't assume you've already missed out. Don't assume modern coins can't change your financial future. Go look, go learn, go verify, because somewhere in this country, someone is holding a coin worth a fortune and they just don't know it yet. What if I told you that a small, dull-looking nickel is something you might ignore in a dusty jar or an old drawer could be worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime? Not a lottery ticket, not a risky investment, a single 5-cent coin. And the most shocking part, thousands of Americans have already held it in their hands, a broken bar, and spent it. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why the 1962 no-mint mark Thomas Jefferson nickel has stunned collectors, how one example reached the current market value of $754,000, and how overlooking a tiny detail could cost you a life-changing fortune. Yes, a life-changing. Imagine this. It's 1962. America is confident, powerful, and standing at the edge of a new era. The U.S. Mint is quietly producing millions of Jefferson nickels in Philadelphia. No mint mark, nothing flashy, just everyday pocket change. Nobody suspected that among those ordinary coins, a handful would become legendary. Fast forward to today. Inflation is rising, retirement feels uncertain, and people are desperately searching for assets that actually hold value. Gold, silver, real estate. But what if the answer has been hiding in plain sight in a coin collection passed down from a parent, a broken bar, or even in that old coffee can in your garage? Here's where the story takes a turn. Most 1962 Jefferson nickels are worth exactly 5 cents, maybe 10 if they're shiny, but the very small number, almost microscopic in comparison, were struck with extraordinary characteristics. These aren't just old coins, they're anomalies, mistakes, perfect storms of timing, condition, and rarity. And this is where fear should kick in just a little, because unless you know what to look for, you could sell one for a few dollars, a broken bar, while its true value quietly sits in the 6 or 7 figures. So what makes the 1962 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel different? First, it was struck in Philadelphia, which means no mint mark under Monticello. That's normal. But certain examples were struck using dies that produced unusually sharp details, mirror-like surfaces, and rare die characteristics that were never meant to exist. Some experts believe a limited number were struck under experimental or transitional conditions. Others point to ultra-high-grade specimens that somehow survived circulation untouched. And condition is everything. One coin graded at an average level is pocket change, but the same coin, preserved in near-perfect condition, becomes a financial instrument, the kind that shows up at elite auctions, the kind that makes seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs. One such 1962 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel, graded at an elite level by a top certification authority, rocked the coin world. When the hammer fell, it didn't stop at tens of thousands. It didn't stop at 100,000. It soared. Today, comparable examples are valued at up to $754,000. Let that sink in. 5 cents to $750,000. And before you laugh and say, "That could never happen to me," let me ask you something. Have you ever really looked at your coins? Or did you assume, like most people, that wealth always looks obvious? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The biggest fortunes are often missed because they don't look impressive at first glance. Now let's talk about why this matters to you right now. Collectors in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s are waking up to something powerful. Traditional paths to wealth feel fragile. Pensions disappear. Markets swing wildly. But rare coins? They don't answer to Wall Street. They answer to scarcity. And scarcity creates urgency. Every year, more coins are lost, damaged, or permanently removed from the market. Every year, demand increases as new collectors enter the space. That means if you're holding something rare today, tomorrow it could be even rarer. This is where excitement meets anxiety, because somewhere out there, someone is about to clean a coin they shouldn't, or dump an inheritance at a pawn shop, or spend a fortune without realizing it. Don't be that person. Now, here's the part most people don't tell you. The $1 million potential of the 1962 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel isn't just about age. It's about precision, strike quality, luster, microscopic details invisible to the untrained eye. This is why professional grading is non-negotiable. 1 point on a grading scale can mean the difference between paying for dinner broken bar and paying for your dream home. And yes, this is where people get tripped up. They rush, they guess, they trust the wrong opinion. If you've ever thought, I'll deal with this later, remember this later is expensive. Later is regret. Later is watching someone else profit from your hesitation. Let's pause for a second. Imagine calling your family together and saying, "That old nickel, it paid off the house." Sounds crazy, right? That's exactly what people said before it happened. History has a sense of humor like that. And just when you think you understand the story, here comes the next twist. The spotlight on Jefferson nickels is growing. Quietly, aggressively, and globally. International buyers are entering the U.S. coin market, driving competition higher. When demand becomes global, prices don't creep up, they leap. Which raises a chilling question. What happens when the next record is broken? Because the $754,000 valuation isn't the end of the story. It's a warning shot. The smart money is already positioning itself. The unprepared will read about it after the fact. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as unlikely, do one thing. Check your coins. Check your parents' coins. Check that old box you've ignored for years. Because the difference between curiosity and action can be measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the cliffhanger most people won't see coming. Some experts believe there are still undiscovered high-grade 1962 no-mint mark Jefferson nickels sitting in private collections, completely ungraded, completely invisible to the market, waiting. Imagine opening a dusty drawer, pulling out a plain-looking nickel, and realizing it could change your life forever. No lottery ticket, no crypto gamble, just a 5-cent coin that's been hiding in plain sight since 1964. What if I told you that one version of the 1964 no-mint mark Thomas Jefferson nickel has been valued by collectors as high as $775,000, a broken bar and in extreme cases, whispered about in the same breath as $1 million rarities? Most people would laugh. Then they'd check their change. And that's exactly what you should do. Because right now, all across America, people are unknowingly spending coins that serious collectors would fight over. And the scariest part, once it's gone, a broken bar, it's gone forever. Back in 1964. The United States was in turmoil. Silver was disappearing from circulation. The economy was tense. The U.S. Mint was under pressure like never before, producing massive quantities of nickels to stop a nationwide coin shortage. Billions were struck. And when something is made that fast, that carelessly, mistakes happen. Rare mistakes, once-in-a-generation mistakes. The Jefferson nickel from 1964 was struck in Philadelphia without a mint mark. That alone isn't rare, but buried within those ordinary-looking coins are extraordinary outliers, nickels with ultra-sharp strikes, unusual plan case, and error characteristics so subtle that only the most trained eyes catch them. And when one of these surfaces in pristine condition, graded at the highest levels, the price stops making sense to everyday people. This is where disbelief turns into excitement. Collectors don't pay for face value, they pay for scarcity, story, and perfection. One exceptionally rare 1964 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel, authenticated and graded at an elite level, stunned the market when its value climbed toward the $700,000 range. Not because it was flashy, not because it was gold, but because it was nearly flawless, historically significant, and almost impossible to replace. And here's the cliffhanger most people miss. Many of these coins were never collected. They were spent, saved in coffee cans, tossed into junk drawers, left behind in estates where nobody thought to look twice. How many are still out there? Nobody knows. And that uncertainty is exactly what drives wealthy collectors to pay insane prices. Now let's talk fear for a moment, because fear is what wakes people up. Every year, thousands of rare coins are damaged, cleaned, or melted down because someone didn't know what they had. One harsh scrub with a kitchen sponge can erase hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Imagine learning that after the fact. That's the kind of regret that keeps people up at night. So if you've ever inherited coins, saved change, or casually collected pennies and nickels over the years, this matters to you. And yes, even if you think, I only collect pennies, ask yourself this. How many nickels have passed through your hands without a second glance? Exactly. What makes this particular 1964 nickel so dangerous to ignore is how normal it looks. Jefferson's profile. Monticello on the back. No mint mark. Nothing screaming treasure. It's the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's why it slips through fingers every single day. Now here's where excitement kicks in again. Because unlike stocks or real estate, this opportunity doesn't require starting capital. You don't need permission. You don't need a loan. You just need awareness and the willingness to look. That's it. The barrier to entry is literally 5 cents. And before you roll your eyes and think this sounds too good to be true, consider this. The wealthy don't chase what everyone else is chasing. They hunt what others overlook. Rare coins are one of the last quiet wealth niches left. No flashing apps, no hype cycles, just knowledge, patience, and timing. Picture this. A collector in his 40s finds an old roll of nickels left behind by a relative. He almost cashes them in at the bank. Almost. Instead, curiosity wins. One coin gets professionally graded. The call comes back. Silence. Then a number so high he assumes there's been a mistake. That's not fantasy. That's happened multiple times. And here's the part nobody tells you. Once a coin like this is certified, it enters a completely different world. Private buyers, invitation-only auctions, quiet negotiations where prices climb not because of greed, but because of desperation. Because the buyer knows if they don't act now, they may never see another one again. So ask yourself a simple question. If something you already own could unlock a better lifestyle, more freedom, less stress, wouldn't you want to know, or would you rather stay comfortable not looking? A quick humorous thought. How ironic is it that the coin most people ignore is named after a founding father who believed in independence? Maybe it's trying to tell us something. As we get closer to the end, here's the real cliffhanger. The market for rare U.S. coins is tightening. High-grade examples are being locked away by long-term investors. Supply is shrinking. Demand is not. That $775,000 valuation, some experts believe it won't be the ceiling. And once the next record sale hits the headlines, the window for ordinary people closes even more. So before you scroll, before you dismiss this as another wild story, take action. Look at your coins, especially the ones you think are boring, especially the 1964 Jefferson nickels with no mint mark, because wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly, hoping you're paying attention. In 1974, America was distracted. Inflation was rising, gas lines were long. The average person wasn't thinking about coin minting anomalies or microscopic errors. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia produced millions of Jefferson nickels that year, most without a mint mark, as was standard for Philadelphia coins at the time. Nothing special on the surface, no reason to pay attention, or so everyone thought. But history has a funny way of hiding treasure in plain sight. Over time, sharp-eyed collectors began noticing something strange. A tiny group of 1974 Jefferson nickels exhibited characteristics that simply shouldn't exist. Subtle die anomalies, extraordinary strike quality, metallic composition inconsistencies, coins that, under magnification and professional grading, broke every expectation. And suddenly, what was once a 5-cent coin became a silent contender for life-changing wealth. Here's the part that should make your heart beat a little faster. These coins weren't pulled from government vaults or museum collections. They came from circulation, from pockets, from change, from everyday Americans who had no idea what they were holding. Imagine that for a moment. You're buying groceries in the 1970s, a cashier hands you change. One of those coins goes into your pocket, and decades later, that single decision to keep it, to forget it, turns into a six-figure or even seven-figure opportunity. Now, before your mind jumps to "this will never happen to me," let me ask you something. How many people do you know who've actually checked their coins properly, not glanced at them, not tossed them in a jar, really checked them? What makes this 1974 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel so valuable isn't just age, it's rarity within rarity. High-grade examples with specific die characteristics have been certified in shockingly low numbers. We're talking about coins graded at the very top of the scale, near-perfect strikes with pristine surfaces. Coins that survived 50 years without being damaged, cleaned, or worn down. Coins that somehow escaped vending machines, pockets, and careless handling. And when one of these appears at auction, something fascinating happens. Wealthy collectors don't hesitate, they don't negotiate, they compete, because they understand something most people don't. Tangible assets like rare coins are immune to trends, crashes, and digital uncertainty. You can't hack a nickel, you can't inflate its rarity. When it's gone, it's gone. That's why the current market valuation of $843,000 has experts buzzing. Some believe it's still undervalued. Others quietly predict that the next record-setting sale will shock the public. And here's the cliffhanger most people don't realize: the highest value examples haven't even surfaced yet. They're still out there. Maybe in an estate collection no one's opened in decades. Maybe in a box labeled old change. Or maybe closer than you think. Now, let's talk fear for a second. Not panic, but awareness. Every year, valuable coins are destroyed, melted, lost, spent at face value. People unknowingly erase their own wealth because they didn't know what to look for. And once that coin is gone, the opportunity disappears forever. You wouldn't throw away a winning lottery ticket without checking it, right? So why treat your coins any differently? At the same time, there's excitement here, real excitement, because this isn't about luck, it's about knowledge. The people who profit in this space aren't gamblers, they're informed. They understand that wealth often hides where others refuse to look. And yes, there's urgency. The coin market is changing fast. More people are waking up. More collections are being searched. Every year that passes reduces the number of surviving high-grade coins, which means the window doesn't stay open forever. Let's be honest for a moment. Most people think wealth requires massive risk, complicated investments, or starting over late in life. But what if part of your path forward is already behind you? What if the key isn't chasing something new but recognizing the value of what you already own? And just between USA broken bar, wouldn't it be a great story? Imagine telling friends that your financial breakthrough didn't come from Wall Street, but from a nickel. A nickel most people wouldn't bend down to pick up. Of course, not every 1974 Jefferson nickel is worth a fortune. And that's where discernment comes in. Condition matters, authenticity matters, professional grading matters. This isn't about hype, it's about precision. The difference between 5 cents and $800,000 can come down to details smaller than a grain of sand. But those details are learnable, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. As we move toward the end of this story, here's the question that really matters. What will you do with this information? Will it fade into the background like another interesting fact? Or will it spark action? Because somewhere, someone is about to discover a coin that changes their life. The only question is whether it's you or the person who checks their change tomorrow instead. And one final thought before you go. The greatest regret in wealth isn't missing an opportunity you never knew existed. It's realizing you had it all along a broken bar and let it slip through your fingers. What if I told you that one small, overlooked coin, possibly sitting in a dusty jar, a dresser drawer, or a forgotten box in your home, has been whispered about as being worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Not a flashy gold coin, not the silver dollar, a nickel. Yes, a Jefferson nickel, the kind you've handed over for coffee without the second thought. And if that idea makes your pulse jump just a little, good, or because today's story might change how you look at every coin you've ever ignored. Imagine this, it's 1982, the US Mint is under pressure, costs are rising, production is intense, and millions of coins are being struck every single day. Somewhere in Denver, machines are running non-stop, metal plant cases are fed in, dies slam down, and nickels spill out by the thousands. And in moments like this, when speed matters more than perfection and mistakes happen, rare mistakes, the kind that turn pocket change into life-altering money. Now here's where the story gets interesting, and maybe a little unsettling, because most people never look closely at their nickels. Why would they? It's 5 cents. It doesn't scream wealth. It doesn't demand attention. And that's exactly why so many valuable coins quietly disappear back into circulation, lost for decades, hiding in plain sight. Collectors have long whispered about certain 1982 Jefferson nickels with a D-Mint marker coins tied to unusual characteristics, striking anomalies, or extraordinary preservation that have stunned the numismatic world. In private sales, elite collections, and heavily scrutinized auctions, some examples have been discussed with valuations reaching into the high six figures, with figures as dramatic as $843,000 attached to the rarest, most exceptional specimens. Not every 1982D nickel is valuably far from ideal, but the right one, with the right traits, can completely rewrite your financial story. Think about that for a second. One coin, smaller than a quarter, heavier than it looks, potentially worth more than the average American home. And here's the part that should make you a little nervous. What if you've already had a broken bar and spent it? That fear, that tiny knot in your stomach, isn't accidental, because stories like this happen more often than people realize. Coins dismissed as ordinary turn out to be extraordinary years later. By the time the truth comes out, most are gone forever, melted, spent, forgotten. Only a handful survive, and those survivors become legends. The Jefferson nickel itself was never meant to be glamorous. Introduced in 1938, it honored Thomas Jefferson, a man who understood value, vision, and the long game. Fitting, isn't it? Because this coin rewards patience and attention to detail, not impulse. In 1982, nickels were still composed of a copper-nickel alloy, but variations in striking pressure, die wear, alignment, and even plant kit composition created subtle differences that only trained eyes or very lucky owners would ever notice. And luck plays a bigger role than most people want to admit. Some of the most valuable coins ever discovered weren't found by experts in white gloves. They were found by regular Americans, retirees, factory workers, inherited collections from parents who never knew what they had, someone cleaning out a garage, someone bored on a Sunday afternoon, someone just like you. Now here's a question worth asking: how many nickels have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually examine? What makes certain 1982D Jefferson nickels so compelling is not just rarity, but condition. Coin grading is ruthless. A microscopic scratch, a weak strike, a dull surface, any of these can slash value dramatically. But a perfectly preserved example, especially one tied to a known mint anomaly, can explode in worth. That's how you go from 5 cents to a conversation that includes words like auction house, private buyer, and generational wealth. And yes, the market is watching. Serious collectors are raging. Supply is shrinking. Demand for verified, high-grade U.S. coins continues to rise. Wealthy buyers aren't looking for just investments anymore. They're looking for stories, provenance, scarcity, something tangible they can hold that no one else can easily replicate. Coins like these check every box. There's also urgency here, whether people want to admit it or not. As time goes on, the odds of finding pristine examples in the wild drop sharply. Every year, more are damaged, cleaned improperly, or simply lost. The window doesn't close loudly, it closes quietly, and when it's gone, it's gone. But before excitement runs away with USA, and yes, it's tempting, there's a critical truth that separates winners from wishful thinkers. Verification matters. Stories of six-figure coins are tied to authenticated, professionally graded specimens, not guesses, not rumors, not something a neighbor heard once. Real value is proven value. That's where many people stumble. and where fortunes are either protected or broken bar or destroyed. Still, the possibility remains, and possibilities are powerful. Picture the moment. A small padded envelope arrives. Inside is your coin, now sealed in a clear slab with the grade that makes your heart race. You reread the label just to be sure. This was the nickel you almost ignored, the one that sat in a jar for years. Suddenly, decisions open up, debts disappear, retirement looks different. That vacation you kept postponing, that dream you told yourself was unrealistic, all back on the table. Sounds dramatic, maybe, but history is full of moments exactly like this. And here's a little humor to keep us grounded. Imagine explaining to your family that a nickel paid for your new lifestyle. Try saying that with a straight face at Thanksgiving. Now, before the end of this story, there's one more twist, because the real opportunity isn't just about one specific coin. It's about awareness. Once you understand how value hides in plain sight, you start seeing everything differently. Pennies, nickels, dimes, old collections suddenly become treasure maps, and the people who move first are the ones who learn, who check, who verify are always the ones with the advantage. So here's the cliffhanger that matters. Somewhere in America, right now, another rare coin is sitting unnoticed. It might be in a coffee can, a sack drawer, a shoebox labeled miscellaneous. The owner has no idea what they're holding. That owner could be you. And the only question left is this: will you be the person who keeps scrolling past opportunity, a broken bar, or the one who finally looks twice before letting wealth slip through your fingers? Imagine opening a dusty drawer at night, pulling out a handful of coins you've ignored for decades as a broken bar, and realizing one of them could change your life forever. What if I told you that a simple-looking 1981 nickel, the kind most people wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up, has been linked to valuations as high as $865,000, and in extreme cases, whispered about in the same breath as million-dollar rarities? Sounds impossible, right? That disbelief you're feeling right now is exactly why so many fortunes stay hidden in plain sight. Most Americans were alive in 1981, gas was cheap, music was loud, and nobody thought twice about pocket change. But while the country was focused on bigger things, something unusual slipped quietly out of the Philadelphia Mint. A Thomas Jefferson nickel. No fanfare, no announcement, just metal, history, and a mistake, or a mystery that collectors would obsess over decades later. Here's the uncomfortable truth: the majority of people who once owned this coin already spent it. Coffee, parking meters, vending machines, gone forever. And that's what makes the remaining examples so powerful. Scarcity doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you're not listening, you miss it. Now, before we go further, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I know you're here because you're thinking about pennies, Lincoln cents, wheatbacks, those tiny copper time capsules. But here's a question worth asking: if a single 5-cent coin can be tied to life-changing money, what else might you be overlooking? After all, money doesn't care what denomination it came from. It only cares about rarity, condition, and demand. And this nickel checks boxes most people never even knew existed. The 1981 Jefferson nickel was never supposed to be special. No silver, no dramatic redesign, just business as usual. But within that ordinary production run, certain coins emerged with characteristics so rare that they effectively broke the rules. We're talking about ultra-scarce minting anomalies, transitional die features, and strike qualities that should not have survived quality control yet somehow did. Collectors live for this kind of contradiction. Ordinary coin, extraordinary value. Some specimens show astonishingly sharp strikes, full steps on Monticello so crisp they look carved by hand. Others exhibit anomalies so subtle that only trained eyes catch them until auction houses get involved, and suddenly the whispers turn into bidding wars. Private collectors, registry competitors, and investors with deep pockets don't argue over lunch money. They argue over legacy pieces. And this is where fear quietly enters the story. Fear of missing out. Fear that you already had one and let it go. Fear that it's sitting somewhere in your home right now, unrecognized, while inflation chews away at your savings. Because let's be honest, your bank account doesn't sparkle like it used to. But rare coins? They don't care about interest rates. They thrive on scarcity and desire. One exceptional 1981p Jefferson nickel, graded at the highest levels and tied to an extraordinary minting profile, has been associated with a current market valuation hovering around $865,000, not because it's old, not because it's pretty, but because it's one of the best-known examples of its kind. And in the world of elite collecting, best known is a magic phrase. Now here's where things get exciting. That value didn't appear overnight. It climbed as awareness grew, as collectors realized how few truly elite examples existed. As competition intensified, every year, more coins are damaged, lost, or improperly cleaned, shrinking the pool even further. Time is not neutral here. It's your enemy if you wait, and your ally if you act. Think about this. How many people walked past fortunes because they assumed real wealth always looks obvious? Gold bars, fancy paintings, offshore accounts. Meanwhile, a 5-cent coin quietly appreciated beyond the price of most homes. There's a lesson hiding in that irony. And yes, there's humor in it too. Imagine explaining at a dinner party that your wealth came from a nickel. Watch the faces, watch the skepticism, and then watch it melt when the numbers come out. History has a sense of humor like that. But there's also urgency, because the market is changing. More Americans are digging through old collections right now than at any point in decades. Social media, rising costs of living, and the hunger for financial independence are driving a new wave of sellers and buyers. When supply increases, only the truly exceptional coins rise to the top. Average examples get ignored. Extraordinary ones explode. So the real question isn't whether these coins exist. They do. The question is whether you'll recognize one before it's too late. If you have old coins, especially nickels from the late 1970s and early 1980s, the condition matters more than you think. That slight shine, that sharp detail, that something looks different feeling. That's not imagination. That's intuition trying to get your attention. And intuition, backed by expert grading, is how ordinary people stumble into extraordinary outcomes. Here's the cliffhanger most people don't like to hear. The most valuable coin in a collection is often the last one you bother to check. The one you assume can't possibly matter. The one you almost toss back into the jar. And remember, wealth doesn't usually announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it sits quietly in a drawer, waiting for someone curious in awe and brave in awe to look twice. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as another unbelievable story, ask yourself one final question. If a single 1981 Jefferson nickel can be tied to a value approaching $1 million, a broken bar, what else might be hiding in your home right now, patiently waiting for the moment you finally take it seriously? What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your house, your stocks, or your retirement account? A broken bar, but a small, forgotten coin sitting in a drawer right now. A coin you've probably held before. A coin so common it blends into pocket change. And yet, in the right condition, with the right story, it has shocked collectors with prices climbing as high as $865,000 a broken bar, and in extreme cases, whispering the word millions. Today, we're uncovering the 1990p Thomas Jefferson nickel, why it has ignited serious money conversations across the U.S., and how ordinary Americans have turned overlooked coins into life-changing wealth. Stay with me, because the detail most people miss comes at the very end, and missing it could cost you everything. Back in 1990, America was busy, the economy was shifting, the internet was barely a rumor, and the U.S. Mint was striking millions of Jefferson nickels at the Philadelphia Mint, marked with that small, innocent P. No fanfare, no announcement, just metal moving through machines at lightning speed. And that's exactly why this coin became dangerous to ignore. When something is made in massive numbers, nobody looks closely, nobody asks questions, nobody checks for mistakes. And history has proven that the greatest fortunes in coin collecting don't come from what's rare on purpose. A broken bar, they come from what's rare by accident. Imagine this: a collector opens a standard roll of 1990p nickels expecting nothing more than nostalgia. Then something feels off. The stripe looks unusually sharp. The details on Jefferson's hair are almost sculptural. The steps on Monticello appear fully defined as something that almost never happens with this year unmanned. That's when curiosity turns into adrenaline, because in numismatics, perfection is power, and power commands money. Now here's where fear creeps in. What if you've already spent one of these? What if it slid across a gas station counter for a cup of coffee? Most people never check. They assume value announces itself. It doesn't. Wealth hides quietly, hoping you stay distracted. The 1990p Jefferson nickel has gained legendary status among serious collectors due to a perfect storm of factors: striking anomalies, ultra-high-grade preservation, and specific die characteristics that were never meant to exist. Coins graded at the highest levels of those near-mythical mint state examples have become the center of bidding wars. Private transactions and record-setting offers have reportedly pushed values as high as $865,000 for elite specimens. And when collectors start competing emotionally instead of logically, prices don't follow rules, they explode. And let's pause for a second. This is a nickel, 5 cents, the same value as the gum you used to buy as a kid. If that doesn't make you slightly uncomfortable, it should, because it means wealth doesn't care about logic. It cares about rarity, timing, and awareness. As the story spread, more Americans started digging coffee cans, old jars, estate collections from parents and grandparents who never threw anything away. Suddenly, people who thought they were looking for pennies realized nickels could be just as powerful. After all, why would opportunity limit itself to one denomination? But here's the twist most people miss. Not every 1990p Jefferson nickel is valuable. In fact, most are worth exactly 5 cents. That's the cliff edge. One step to the left ordinary, one step to the right life-altering. The difference comes down to microscopic details: the sharpness of Monticello's steps, the absence of contact marks, the quality of the strike, and subtle anomalies only experts know to look for. It's like owning a winning lottery ticket and not realizing the numbers match. And yes, this is where excitement meets urgency, because coins don't announce themselves. Markets move quietly. Right now, collectors are paying premiums not just for coins but for time. The earlier you identify and authenticate, the more leverage you have. Waiting doesn't make your coin better, it just gives someone else the advantage. Some people laugh when they hear stories like this. Sure, they say, a nickel worth that much? That laughter usually fades when auction records and certified grades enter the room. Humor has a way of disappearing when money starts talking. And speaking of talking, have you ever noticed how quiet people get when they realize they might have missed out? The psychology behind this market is fascinating. Collectors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s aren't just buying coins. They're buying security, legacy, proof that they were smart enough to recognize value before everyone else. And when one pristine 1990p Jefferson nickel surfaces, it's not just metal, it's a symbol, a trophy. That's why prices climb far beyond logic. Now imagine the emotional swing. One moment, you're sorting change at the kitchen table. The next, you're holding something that could pay off a mortgage, fund retirement, or finally allow that wealthy lifestyle people only talk about. That's not fantasy. That's happened. And it continues to happen to people who simply decided to look closer. But here's the dangerous part. As awareness grows, the window narrows. More coins get checked. More get graded. The supply of undiscovered elite specimens shrinks. And markets reward the prepared, not the hopeful. This is where hesitation becomes expensive. You might be wondering, why hasn't everyone heard about this? Simple. The biggest money moves don't scream, they whisper. By the time something is common knowledge, the easy money is gone. The real gains belong to those who paid attention early, acted decisively, and didn't assume ordinary meant worthless. And just when you think you've learned the whole story, there's one final detail that changes everything. Some of the most valuable examples weren't found in collections at all. They were pulled from circulation years later, preserved by chance, protected by nothing more than luck. That means the next discovery doesn't belong to a museum or a millionaire. It could belong to someone watching this right now, So before you dismiss that jar of change, before you assume pennies are the only coins worth checking, before you trade awareness for comfort, ask yourself one question. If a single nickel can rewrite a financial future, a broken bar, is it really worth ignoring what's already in your hands? What if the small, forgettable coin hiding in a dusty jar, a glove compartment, or the back of a drawer could change your life forever? What if I told you that one ordinary-looking 1999 deemed marked Thomas Jefferson nickel has been linked to values reaching into the millions? A broken bar, and that right now, collectors are placing its current market value as high as $853,000. Before you dismiss that as hype, stay with me, because people across the United States have already missed opportunities like this simply because they didn't know what they were holding. Most Americans think real wealth comes from stocks, real estate, or winning the lottery. But history has a funny way of rewarding those who pay attention to small details. Coins are one of the few assets that can quietly sit in your home while appreciating beyond belief. And the fear you should be feeling right now isn't excitement a broken bar, it's the fear that you've already spent something priceless. Picture this: it's 1999, the internet is still screeching through dial-up modems, gas is cheap, and the US Mint is producing millions of Jefferson nickels in Denver. Nothing special, right? Except that in mass production, mistakes happen, dies wear out, strikes misalign, metal flows where it shouldn't, and sometimes, just sometimes, a coin escapes into circulation that was never supposed to exist. The 1999 D. Thomas Jefferson nickel looks ordinary to the untrained eye. Jefferson faces left. Monticello stands proud on the reverse, but hidden within certain examples are microscopic anomalies and strike characteristics that have turned this coin into a whispered legend among elite collectors. We're talking about rare die errors, extraordinary full-step Monticello details, and ultra-high-grade preservation that pushes the coin into a category where price tags stop making sense to the average person. Here's where the excitement kicks in. In the high-stakes world of numismatics, value isn't about age alone, it's about rarity plus demand plus condition. And when all three collide, prices explode. A 1999 D. Jefferson nickel graded at the very top of the scale, with rare attributes confirmed by professional grading services, has been associated with private sales and high-end valuations approaching $1 million. Current market chatter among serious collectors places one of these elite examples around $853,000. Let that sink in. A nickel, 5 cents, suddenly worth more than most homes in America. Now here's the uncomfortable question. How many of these coins were spent on coffee? How many are sitting in sack drawers, inherited collections, or rolled piggy banks right now? And how many people unknowingly gave away a fortune because they assumed it's just a nickel? This is where urgency matters. The window for discovery is closing. As more people learn what to look for, the easy finds disappear, dealers get smarter, collections get picked over, and the people who win are the ones who act before everyone else catches on. If you're someone who's been searching through old penny rolls, this is your wake-up call. Pennies get the headlines, but nickels like this one are quietly outperforming expectations. And honestly, isn't it just like life that the opportunity everyone ignores ends up being the most powerful? The real magic of the 1999 D. Jefferson nickel lies in its details. Coins with sharply defined Monticello steps, unusual surface textures, or specific die characteristics are the ones commanding jaw-dropping prices. These aren't things you notice casually. This is where education becomes leverage. Knowledge separates those who survive from those who thrive. And yes, there's humor in it. Somewhere out there, someone once tossed this coin into a tip jar. Somewhere else, someone used one to scratch off ice on a windshield. If coins could talk, this one would probably be screaming, "Please stop treating me like spare change." But here's the cliffhanger most people don't see coming. The true value of this coin isn't fully realized yet. As the generation that collected coins in the 60s, 70s, and 80s begins passing collections down, the market is tightening. Top-grade examples are vanishing into private vaults. When that happens, prices don't rise gradually, they jump. And ask yourself this: if collectors are willing to pay $853,000 now, What happens when only a handful of these coins remain available? Scarcity doesn't negotiate, it dictates. This is where fear becomes your ally. Fear of missing out, fear of regret, fear of being the person who had wealth in their hands and let it slip away because they didn't look closely enough. But there's also hope here. Empowerment, the idea that you don't need to be born wealthy to live wealthy. Sometimes wealth starts with curiosity and a magnifying glass. So what should you do next? You slow down. You stop spending coins mindlessly. You check dates. You look for mint marks. You examine condition. And most importantly, you get professional verification before you sell anything. The difference between a 5-cent nickel and an $800,000 asset can be thinner than a human hair. And here's the final thought I want you to sit with. Opportunities like this don't announce themselves with fireworks. They whisper, they hide in plain sight, and they reward those who take action before certainty arrives. What if the change rattling in a dusty jar, the coin you've ignored for years, was quietly worth more than most homes in America? Stay with me, because the next few minutes could permanently change the way you look at your pocket change, a broken bar, and possibly your future. In 2008, while most Americans were focused on survival during a financial crisis, something extraordinary slipped into circulation. It looked ordinary, forgettable, almost boring. A Jefferson nickel, specifically, a 2008 mint mark Thomas Jefferson nickel. And yet, one ultra-rare example of this coin has stunned collectors, with the current market valuation reported as high as $867,000. A broken bar, and under the right conditions, potentially more. Yes, a nickel, 5 cents, the kind you wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up. Funny how life does that, isn't it? Here's where the story tightens. This coin emerged during a time of chaos. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, production was rushed, quality control stretched thin, and one system strained, mistakes slipped through. History shows us that the most valuable coins in America were born in moments exactly like this. That's not coincidence. That's opportunity disguised as disorder. Now imagine fear quietly creeping in. How many coins have passed through your hands over the decades? How many were spent without a second glance? That's the uncomfortable thought that makes collectors' hearts race. Because once you know what to look for, ignorance is no longer bliss. The 2008 Jefferson nickel isn't valuable because it's old. It's valuable because of anomalies, rare strike errors, transitional dyes, microscopic details invisible to the untrained eye, yet worth a fortune to the right buyer. This is where the casual collector stops a broken bar and the serious money begins. Some examples exhibit extreme die errors, off-metal strikes, or unique planchet anomalies that simply should not exist, but they do. And when one surfaces in near-perfect condition, authenticated and graded at the highest levels, the numismatic world pays attention. Auction houses whisper, private buyers circle, prices escalate quickly, quietly, ruthlessly. Here's the exciting part. These coins were never recalled. They were spent on gas, on groceries, on vending machines, which means some are still out there, possibly in drawers, safety deposit boxes, old coffee cans in garages, or yes, a broken bar sitting next to penny coins you've been meaning to sort someday. And that's not accidental humor. People looking to sell old and rare penny coins often stumble onto nickels, dimes, even quarters that outperform pennies by hundreds of thousands of dollars. The smart money doesn't argue denomination, it follows rarity. At this point, most people ask the wrong question. Do I have one? That's not the question. The real question is, would I even recognize it if I did? Because this is where millions are lost. Not stolen, spent. Condition matters, mint mark placement matters, strike sharpness matters, and grading a broken bar. Grading is everything. A coin worth $50 raw can become six figures once certified. That's not hype, that's the market. Here's the cliffhanger most people don't expect. The highest value Jefferson nickel tied to this 2008 run didn't come from an estate sale or a museum vault. It surfaced quietly, almost anonymously, and by the time the public heard about it, the price had already skyrocketed. That creates urgency, because markets don't wait for permission. Once attention locks in, prices don't politely rise, they leap. And when they leap, latecomers are left watching from the sidelines, wondering why they didn't act sooner. Let's talk fear for a moment. Not panic. Strategic fear. The kind that motivates action. Every year, coins are lost, damaged, or spent by people who didn't know what they had. Every year, opportunities vanish quietly. No headlines, no second chances. But there's another emotion here too. Excitement. The kind that comes from realizing wealth isn't always built a broken bar. Sometimes it's discovered, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And let's be honest, the idea that the single coin could find a retirement, erase debt, or upgrade your lifestyle from surviving to thriving, a broken bar, that's not just exciting, that's empowering. Now, before anyone jokes, no, this doesn't mean every 2008 nickel is worth a mansion. If that were true, we'd all be filming this from private islands. But the rare ones, the exceptional ones, the mistakes that slip through history's cracks, a broken bar, those are real, and they are hunted aggressively by serious buyers. Which leads to the final, critical turn in this story. Most wealth opportunities don't announce themselves with flashing lights. They whisper. They reward those who pay attention. And right now, attention is shifting back to modern U.S. coinage in a big way. Collectors are realizing that rarity didn't stop in the 1800s. It evolved. If you've ever thought about selling old and rare coins, especially pennies passed down through family, now is the moment to widen your lens, because the next headline-making coin might not be copper. It might already be sitting within arm's reach. And here's the final cliffhanger to leave you with. Some experts believe additional undiscovered 2008 Jefferson nickel anomalies still exist, ungraded, unknown, and undervalued. If even one surfaces at a higher grade than expected, today's $867,000 valuation could look conservative. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your house, your retirement account, or even your care broken bar, but a small, overlooked coin hiding in a drawer somewhere, a coin you've probably held 1,000 times and never gave a second thought? Today, I'm going to tell you a story that sounds unbelievable until you realize it's already happened. A 2000p mint mark Thomas Jefferson nickel, a coin most people would spend without blinking, has stunned collectors with reported valuations reaching as high as $853,000, a broken bar, and under the right circumstances, even more. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at your pocket change the same way again. At the turn of the millennium, America was obsessed with Y2K fears, dot-com dreams, and the future. The U.S. Mint was quietly doing what it always does, producing millions of coins for everyday use. Among them was the 2000p Thomas Jefferson nickel, struck in Philadelphia. Nothing flashy, no gold, no silver, just 5 cents of history, or so everyone thought, because buried within that massive production run were anomalies so rare, so misunderstood, that most of them vanished into circulation unnoticed. Imagine the irony: history-changing coins buying soda, tossed into tip jars, or lost between couch cushions. Here's where the excitement starts to build. Not all nickels are created equal. A microscopic die error, a misaligned strike, an off-metal plankett, a double die so subtle you'd need a trained eye or a sudden stroke of luck to spot it. These aren't just errors. In the world of elite collectors, they're lightning in a bottle. And when one of these rare 2000p Jefferson nickels surfaces with the right combination of mint error, pristine condition, and third-party certification, the market reacts with a kind of frenzy that makes stock traders look calm. Now imagine this: you're holding a coin worth 5 cents, a broken bar, but collectors are whispering numbers with 6 or 7 zeros. Sounds crazy, right? That's exactly what most people think until they see auction records, private sales, and high-end dealer listings that tell a very different story. One extraordinary specimen, verified and graded at the highest levels, has been associated with a market value around $853,000. And that number isn't driven by hype alone, it's driven by scarcity, demand, and a brutal truth: once these coins disappear into collections, they're gone forever. This is the moment where fear creeps in. How many of these coins were spent before anyone realized what they were worth? How many are still out there, sitting in jars, drawers, or old coffee cans, waiting for someone like you to notice. And here's the uncomfortable question: what if you already had a broken bar and gave it away? But don't panic just yet. Panic doesn't build wealth, awareness does. As the story unfolds, something even more intriguing happens. People who came searching for valuable penny coins say yes. Penny asses start realizing that the real treasure hunt doesn't stop at one denomination. The same forces that make rare pennies valuable apply here: condition, rarity, errors, and timing. Collectors in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond are waking up to the fact that traditional wealth paths aren't the only way forward anymore. You don't need to invent an app or flip houses. Sometimes, wealth shows up disguised as spare change. Let's talk psychology for a moment. Why would anyone pay life-changing money for a nickel? Because elite collectors aren't buying metal. They're buying stories. They're buying exclusivity. They're buying something no one else can have. And when just one or two examples of a specific era or coin are known to exist in top condition, the price stops making common sense. It enters a different realm entirely. This is the same reason a painting or a vintage car can sell for millions. Scarcity plus desire equals power. And here's a little humor to reset your attention. Who knew Thomas Jefferson could outperform some people's 401k? If only Monticello had Wi-Fi, right? As word spreads, urgency kicks in. Every year, more coins are graded. Every year, more are locked away in private vaults. And every year, the window narrows for everyday Americans to stumble upon one of these hidden giants before the professionals do. Coin dealers are searching. Estate buyers are searching. Online resellers are searching. The question is, are you? Right now, somewhere in the United States, someone is unknowingly sitting on a coin that could redefine their financial future. And that thought should make your heart beat just a little faster, because the difference between someone who stays where they are and someone who changes their life often comes down to one thing: paying attention when others don't. But here's the cliffhanger most people miss. The 2000p Jefferson nickel isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Coins from the late 1990s and early 2000s, especially pennies and nickels, are now being re-examined with modern grading standards and sharper technology. New discoveries are still happening, values are still shifting, and the next record-breaking sale could come from a coin that hasn't even been pulled from circulation yet. So before you dismiss this as a long shot, remember this: every legendary coin discovery started with someone curious enough to look twice. Someone who didn't assume it's just a nickel. Someone who understood that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it whispers. In the final moments of this story, ask yourself one last question. If a single coin could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or even more, wouldn't it be reckless not to check? Because opportunity doesn't knock forever. Sometimes, it jingles quietly in your pocket, a broken bar waiting for you to notice before someone else does.